Ayub from the Localization Fireside Chat, and welcome to another episode. I lost count. I think we're 149 today, episode
Very
149.
nice.
Today we've recorded, I think, 4, and this is 5 episodes. So it's been back-to-back recording episodes all day, which is, I'm thankful for the guests. I'm thankful for the audience. I'm thankful for the contribution, very filled with gratitude to everybody who contributed to this discussion, to this conversation today and to this evening. I do have the honor and the distinct pleasure to be joined by Dr. Nelva Lee. And I'm excited. I can't wait to talk to you. I've read what you do, the medical interpretation, technical training. I really like that discussion. We've done several episodes with some of the US counterpart that I work with. I spent 23 years in the language industry, still in the language industry. I serve it in various capacity, but can't wait to get to know you a little bit, Dr. Lee, and get to know what you do. Welcome to the channel.
Thank you so much for having me, Robin.
Really appreciate it. And as we say on this channel, Dr. Lee, everybody's got a story. So let's start with this one.
Yes.
What's your story?
Wonderful. Well, I have a very unique story, I believe. So I am originally from Panama, the country. I immigrated to the U.S. due to the Noriega dictatorship. Fun fact, my dad worked for the canal and therefore was targeted by Noriega and his generals. And we lived under a lot of pressure. And anyone that could sent their children away. And so my dad did. And it was a very tenuous time. A lot of people were exiled and executed. And so I came to this country very, very appreciative of the freedom that America gave to its citizens. And since then, we have been very, very involved and politically conscious, let's just say that. Okay. So much so that when I graduated high school, I very much wanted to go into political science. But I also had a love for healthcare. And so healthcare won out back then. And so I ended up getting my bachelor's, master's, and doctorate in healthcare administration. When I moved up here to Georgia with my husband, I was a director of patient advocacy at the Grady Health System. And one of my programs in that department was interpreting services. And this is back in the early 2000s, and it was really difficult to find training for your interpreters back then to get them qualified. And so I decided that I would fill the gap and start my own program. I was at the time trained as a curriculum developer because I worked as a professor, adjunct professor of healthcare administration courses, and I was trained as a curriculum developer. So I used those skills plus the need to fill this gap in the industry and created this training program that helped bilingual individuals to become medical interpreters. And I became so involved in the industry, Robin, that became a subject matter expert towards the certification process and became the first chair of the National Board of Certification for Medical Interpreters.
Congratulations. That's quite
Thank you. Yes, yes. And so after 20 years, I kind of transitioned away from training so much as to providing the services themselves. So I now have an agency that provides interpretation services, and we're in the process of developing an AI, because if you don't, can't wait for them to beat you. So we joined them. So just to have it as a option, we're still going to have it side by side with live interpreters. So that's a little bit about my story, Robin. I would have a lot more to offer, but we'll have a conversation.
This is good. It's a good start. Actually, you gave me a lot of questions, but I'm not going to drill you with questions here. But what we're going to do is we're going to have a little bit more of a context for our audience, so they have an idea. Dr. Lee, according to bio, founder and CEO of Medical Interpreting Trade School, appointed to the Georgia Department of Community Health by Brian Kemp, and a former candidate of the Georgia Superintendent of Schools. And she has a deep experience at the intersection of language access, healthcare, education, and leadership. Again, bio speaks for itself. You got a lot of experience in the topic. So one of the things that, in the U.S., I guess, and you started the conversation by said, I immigrated to the United States. I did the same. I escaped a civil war in Beirut back in the 80s. And thank God for Canada, who opened the door for us, me and my mom and dad and the family, basically. I was 19 years old when I arrived here. And similar story. I mean, thank God we landed here. And I appreciate every minute of every time that I'm in Canada that allowed us to become Canadian citizen and fulfill our lives the way we're supposed to, instead of running from shelter to shelter and bomb shelter, I mean,
Yes, yes,
in a war-torn country. So thankful for that. Now, in the US, like educate me on this a little bit and maybe for the audience. We hear that English is the predominant language in the US and
that's
everybody
correct.
supposed to speak English, but there are, I'm assuming, supposed to be some pockets of English is not really well traded or well exercised. And it becomes critical, correct me if I'm wrong, when delivering healthcare services. How's that? Like, how
Exactly.
many languages do you cover? Is that like a problem for the medical industry, for the medical sector?
It is very much so. And here's the thing, it's considered, language limited English proficient. So even if you are proficient in English enough to order a steak or ask for where the bathroom is, when it comes to your health, you don't want to use those limited English. So it's already stressful as it is
Hmm.
to go to a healthcare provider without the added of not being able to understand and not being able to communicate. And providers have found that if they don't use a qualified interpreter, that they increase their liability and they're actually utilizing a lot more healthcare services because they have to add so many diagnostic services because they're trying to figure out what's wrong rather than just take a good history, right?
Sure, yeah.
Utilizing an interpreter. And so it's a lifesaver,
Hmm.
literally a lifesaver to have a qualified interpreter. And by qualified, someone that has been trained and their language proficiency in both languages has been determined to be proficient
Absolutely.
at least an intermediate level.
Absolutely. Now, for the audience who's listening to this episode, and I'm thankful for almost 1,200 downloads per day on this channel. I really
Wonderful.
appreciate you listening in on this one. So this is a little different what Dr. Lee's talking about than you taking your cousin or your brother to do the translation for you or to do the interpretation for you. They may not be well versed in the medical terms. I think that's where Dr. Lee is alluding
That's
to here in
correct.
her conversation. They may do a good job in doing the administrative stuff and translating for you that way, fine. But when it comes to a doctor to patient discussion, these needs to come in from somebody who is trained on the topic. Correct me if I'm
That is exactly correct. And here's the other thing. Let's just say that they are proficient. Maybe you bring along a nurse. You have the added issue of confidentiality. What if you are not ready to share your medical history with your family
true,
members,
yeah.
right? And so that's
And the
you know
liability too, Dr. Lee, right? So
correct,
if let's say God forbid something bad happens, the doctors can wash their hands out of it.
correct.
Yeah, the medical interpreter was not approved, right? So I mean, you're using something on your own here.
Well, the onus to use a qualified interpreter really comes from the doctor. Now, as a patient,
Hmm.
you can waive that right, but they are the ones that have to utilize qualified interpreter.
Dr. Lee, who pays for that service? Is it the patient or the medical establishment?
The medical establishment has to pay for that.
And is there a way for the medical establishment says, I don't want to pay for this. I'm not expensing that.
It's a law, it's the civil rights law here in the state, here in the country of the U.S. I don't know how it is in Canada,
Yeah, yeah.
but in the country in the U.S. It's a requirement because it is a law. Now, unfortunately, it's an unfunded, mandate in that the federal government does not cover the full cost of it. In certain states, Medicaid might cover most of it. Some insurances might cover it, but the majority of it is the brunt of it is borne by the health institution,
You mean the health institution, be the hospital, whoever provided the care.
hospital or clinic or provider.
And so, you talk a lot about the intersection between language and leadership. How does that work for you? What's your take on that one?
I have been a leader most of my life. I believe that's one of the reasons I went into healthcare administration because I thought, well, I'm a natural leader, so I might as well. But here's the thing: in this space specifically, I was able to utilize my leadership skills because we didn't have certification, so it was not even considered a profession until there was a certification, a national certification, where providers could say, we're only going to hire certified interpreters. And now they can do that. So as of 2009, actually 2010, when the certifications came online. And I'm very grateful that I was part of that. Really and truly, leadership is just having a vision and executing
Yeah,
that vision.
that's right. That's
And
right.
I'm very good at that.
So, Dr. D, my understanding from the certification part, on the certification part for medical interpreters, is it on a state by state level or is it a national thing?
It's national for medical. Now, for legal interpreting, they're still doing it on a state by state, even county by county in some
But
instances.
that causes a lot of issues. Somebody could be certified in one state, may not be certified in another state.
Like, that's for legal interpreting. That is for those that want to interpret in the court system and the like. But for medical interpreting, we do have two national certifications, and I was involved with one of those.
Okay. And you said you were involved, so that practice is stopped?
My involvement piece,
Yeah, your
but
involvement is stopped.
right, but
The
it,
practice
it
still
still
on the go
continues.
kind of thing.
Correct.
And where is it located? Is it in Georgia?
No, they're both actually, well, no, one is out of California and the other is out of Boston. So the one that I was involved in was out of Boston.
Out of Boston. Okay. Okay.
Hmm.
And this is when you moved on and you opened your own practice in providing medical interpretation to
Correct.
hospitals.
Yes, my
And
own
when you
agency.
provide this service, Dr. D, is it for your specific state, your specific region? Is it national?
It's national and it's a remote service. So we don't necessarily do it in person interpretation. It's all remote. So video, phone interpreting.
And what do you use like for technology, like for video interpreting? How do you use that?
Just a platform, and the
You
platform
have
has
developed your own platform?
correct, yes.
Okay. Wow. And are you using, you mentioned AI earlier, like where does AI play a role like in the providing the service?
Well, we believe that AI is chomping at the bit to get into the space, right? It's
Already, yeah.
already pretty much taken over translation, which is written,
Hmm.
but it hasn't quite gotten to the point where it's proficient enough for medical or legal interpreting being used. Google Translate, they're using it for a lot of general stuff, and that's
Hmm.
fine. But when it comes to medical and legal interpreting, it really has not gotten to the level where it's sufficient yet. It's
Hmm.
probably going to get there in the future. I believe, though, that if there's going to be an AI that does interpreting, it has to come from the industry
Hmm.
because whenever an AI starts, the foundation is critical,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
The initial learning is
I understand.
critical, and we need to develop an AI that understands the different nuances of culture.
Hmm.
It's not just one size fit all for the language. It
I understand.
depends on the culture and the different dialects, etc. So it's important that the AI that ends up becoming the leader in
Hmm.
the space comes from a language industry.
100%.
And
It
that
cannot be imposed from the outside.
correct.
Now, there is a company which I'll be happy to introduce you to. It's in from the industry. I
Hmm.
did a couple of podcasts with them. I demonstrated their technology, and it's commercial now. And what they're doing is they are using AI. And you know the old theory that says, you can have parts of the conversation that are easy part,
Hmm.
parts that are more complex parts of the conversation.
Correct.
So the idea there is to inject the human on the complex part, and to leave
Hmm.
the easy part to be handled
By the
by AI. Now the question is, how do you transition between the two, and this is where the technology comes in. So yeah, after the call, if you're interested,
yeah, for
facilitate
sure.
the introduction just to say hello to the folks and um,
My competition.
yeah, start a conversation. May not work. I have no idea.
Got it.
But they what I've seen, it seems to work. And they're not the only one. Like there are a few others out there that they're practicing this. So let's say a patient calls in, or a nurse calls a patient to check on them at home, etc. So the parts of the conversation can be handled through AI because she's doing like the usual casual stuff. Hi, how are you?
Correct.
How was your day?
The history and things like
And once they get into like the more complex questions, that's when the nurse who's on standby will take on the call.
that. Interesting. Okay. I like that model.
Yeah. So I'll do that. And now on the medical interpretation, what do you look for in your team when you're hiring somebody? What is it that you're looking for in terms of
That they are
skills,
true.
in terms of their role that they would play in your team, etc.?
Well, first and foremost, that they're trained because being bilingual is just the basic qualification, the bare necessity. But you have to be trained. And here's the other thing: in the industry, 40 hours is sufficient right now. Is the bare minimum to go on to your certification. And we at MiTio believed that was not sufficient. So that's why we did 60 hours for those 60-hour training for those who were already in the medical field and 160-hour training for those that were not. So training is critical. So you're not just learning medical terminology, you're learning confidentiality in healthcare law. You're learning, the importance of protocol, in interpreting. And there's just a host of other very critical, important things that you can only learn through a training process.
Absolutely.
And
Now, yeah, I'm a big supporter on the topic of women in leadership, to be honest with you. I've done several
all right,
topics on this one. Latest one I did, my counterpart in Argentina and Buenos Aires did a podcast. It's in Spanish. You can feel free to look it up. It's like a week old now. And the first female that took over as a CEO for a company in Argentina called Ecogas. That's the
okay,
national gas company. And nobody in female leadership has taken that role before. So we've done a podcast with her. I've done a podcast with somebody. I'm not sure if you're familiar with her, Marsha Clark, etc. So big supporter of that. So talk to me about
thank you.
your role as a leader, as a female leader, a woman leader in the industry that you're in. So one of the things that probably in leadership journey that comes up is, did confidence come first before the influence, or influence forced confidence? Where I'm going with that. So
Well, I can tell you, Robin, like I said, I noticed very early on in life that I had leadership qualities, that people listened to me when I spoke, and that I was able to rally the troops, and was able to really inspire and direct people towards a common goal. I noticed that, like I said, back in high school. And so that's one of the reasons that I decided to go into health administration, because I felt that that was a better utilization of my talents than, say, just going to nursing school or medical school. And I did definitely consider those professions, but I thought, health administration is a better use of my natural talent. That being said, leadership is something that you constantly have to hone. And so I devour leadership books as well. I do. I'm always learning from the best. And so, in fact, at my current position, I do universities. I call them universities where we read a leadership book together and discuss it.
wow.
And so, yes, it's just really important to constantly kind of sharpen the knife, if you will, of your leadership skills. So I would say that the natural talent came first, but definitely I honed that natural talent over the years.
Now, you've been involved in as well, Dr. Lee, in the public sector, because you were
Correct.
appointed to a little bit to the public sector. I'm not sure if you're still involved or not. Are you?
So I was appointed by Governor Kemp to the Department of Community Health here in Georgia, but now I am actually currently a candidate for Georgia Superintendent of Schools, which is a
Oh,
statewide
okay.
position.
Okay, so you're a candidate now. So in the next
Correct.
election, you will run probably, right?
I'm actually running right now. I'm
You,
in the primaries in May. So
I'm voting
any
for
of
you.
your
I'm Canadian, but I can't vote for you.
any of your listeners that are in Georgia can vote for me.
Any listener who is in Georgia, please go vote for Dr. Lee and make me proud. Okay, I know I have a lot of listeners in Georgia, so make me proud. Now, one of the things that normally we talk about, and there's quite the disconnect, to be honest, is between the public sector and what's really going on in the language industry. So especially like in countries such as Canada is less, because there's still a gap, to be honest with you. Although we're a bilingual country by policy, but we still have some gaps. Some of them are bigger than others. But in the US, your language is English. And I'm assuming you walk into like the public sector and you talk about language access and, people need to connect and all that stuff. And people look at you like, probably, what is this? Is it strange, or is it people are warming up to the idea?
It depends on the area. So
Mm,
if you have an area, say Atlanta, for instance, that is very diverse, right? You don't get that as much. But then if you go out into the rural areas, it's less so. So obviously, it's pockets of states that are very, very diverse states. You're talking, like your Boston and your New Yorks and your Texas and California. You're going to know less pushback in those states for sure, because they understand. They've had to deal with it
yeah.
themselves. The importance of language access.
So the policymakers, let's say in most states, are they pro or against language access in general? Like, do they think about it? Hey, listen, you came to the United States, you need to speak English, and that's it. Or are they
Right.
more tolerant?
I'm a big believer that everyone should learn English. Don't get me wrong, right? I believe if you come to this country, you should learn to speak the language. When I go to France to visit, I want to utilize the little bit of French that I
Actually, you're
have.
forced to speak French in France.
There you go. So it's important to learn the language. The
Hmm.
issue becomes, is your language proficient enough to be able to really deal on an ethical and even moral basis
And plus the
for that?
transition period. I mean, yes,
Correct.
they're learning English, but you may spend 2 3 years trying to perfect the language. For those 2 3 years, you need some hand holding a little bit.
Correct. And then most people, like I said, can get by just fine with basic or even intermediate English.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
But healthcare and legal English is much more advanced, even for those that are from this country. They find healthcare and legal jargon very difficult to understand.
Well, sometimes I mean you hear things. I have to look it up in a dictionary. Like I mean, this stuff is pretty complicated, especially if the topic that you're not familiar with. Like people tell me, "Oh, I speak Spanish." Well, yeah, you go to a restaurant, you know how to order a beer. Good for you. But if you engage in a conversation that's a bit technical, you're over your head. I'm assuming, unless somebody who's
Exactly.
actually went to university, studied it many years. Same idea.
Exactly.
So, from a the public sector perspective, what would you think the one thing that they are getting wrong, or they should you hope that for them to change on the public side?
Really making sure that it's a funded mandate because you'll find that in states where Medicaid covers some to most of the interpreting services, they utilize it more,
Hmm.
right? Whereas in other states, even here in Georgia, we have so many, not so much the larger hospitals, but so many of the smaller clinics and smaller hospitals still not utilizing qualified interpreters.
Yes.
And that is a shame. Even in 2025, still going on.
And for our listeners, I do have a family in Georgia. They're in Atlanta, just outside of Atlanta. I'm going to
Okay,
say hello to my cousin John and his
wonderful.
family. So there you go. So if you're listening to this podcast, John, there you go. I said hello to you and Merry Christmas.
Yeah. Okay, John, I need your votes now, John. Go to
That's it.
drnelvalee.com and learn about my
So
platform.
we're
Wonderful.
doing a campaign for Dr. Lee here. That's fine.
Thank you.
I'm good with it.
Good.
So during the campaign, obviously, and you're campaigning as we speak for the superintendent of schools, what conversation on multilingualism that stood out for you the most?
So it hasn't come up as much. Things that come up is children that might come to the U.S. with a language barrier, right? And I had one of those myself. My husband and I adopted a little girl from Puerto Rico, and she came to us when she was 8 and had zero English. She knew, McDonald's and hello, things like that. So she came and she had to learn the language. She had to learn how to read, and it was an uphill battle. But eventually, she was able to acquire those skills. And I'll tell you something that happens a lot here, Robin, for schools. A lot of times they don't know what to do. Whether it's a child that's immigrated or a refugee, they don't know what to do with them, and so they put them in a special ed. And that is a disgrace. It's an absolute disgrace. These children don't have learning disabilities. They just don't understand the language. And so we need to do a better job of integrating these children and teaching them. Children learn how to a second language so easily, but especially when they're immersed, right? My daughter learned English in 3 months. So it's important that we don't treat them as though they have some sort of learning disability or they have some sort of mental health, or mental or developmental issue.
Hmm.
All they have is language barrier. And for children, that can easily be overcome.
Absolutely. Now, speaking of learning other languages, now I've had several conversations with some of the colleagues in the US, and one of them in particular, she owns a language school and she deals with the State Department or one of those. I don't remember who, but some
Okay.
federal government entities, and they send their teams over to the school to learn languages. And she teaches
Okay.
hundreds of languages, I guess, in her school.
Very nice.
As the public school system and the private school systems at least in the state of Georgia, do they teach other languages? Like, is there programs for those? Like, somebody wants to learn Spanish, French, Japanese, Chinese, whatever.
Most schools, especially in high school, will have a language requirement. So whether it's Spanish, a couple of years of Spanish or things like that. For the most part, if a school is going to teach another language, it's going to be Spanish here in the U.S., unless you're in certain pockets where they'll have other offerings, such as French or German or Japanese or Chinese. But I don't think that's the right course. If we're going to teach a language to children, it needs to happen in the earlier ages, not in the latter,
100%.
right? Because
It has
if
it has to be embedded in their upbringing.
very early. So if we want them to actually learn that language and not just think that they know the language, introduce it kindergarten, preschool, definitely before fifth grade if you truly want them to learn the language.
To be integrated. And also for the newcomers, some of the newcomers are coming in at an adult age and they don't
Hmm.
speak the language, the English language. Is there opportunity for them to learn English? Is there like schools that teaches English that's offered for free, for instance?
There are pockets in like community colleges and community centers and things of that
English
nature
as a
that you
second language, is that how they do it?
correct,
Yeah, okay.
correct, yes.
Is that helpful? Does it help?
Yes, for sure. For those that actually attend on a regular basis, it definitely helps.
So, we talked about the inequity in the. I had that on my list, but you covered it. The inequity, like especially on early education when you first start early in the both languages. I remember when as a young child, I grew up in Beirut, and my parents sent me to a French school. Although there are like the usual public school system, they sent me to a French school. So from the age of 2, 3 years old, like over there, they go like to school at a young age. Here, you guys
Hmm.
call it like I don't know preschool or
Right.
kindergarten, whatever. So, but just formal school. 2-year-old, 3-year-old, they're going to school and they're learning French.
Very nice.
Now, French is embedded in my mind, and I can go like a year or two without speaking a word of French, but then it kicks back in like it's my mother tongue, right? So,
Right.
and believe it or not, English is my third language, and I didn't go to school to learn it. I never attended a class of English school at all. I'm not perfect. I make mistakes, and not everybody knows who listens to the channel how many mistakes I make. But it's part of my charm. They tell me. I don't know.
Okay. I love it. I love it. Well, once you learn a couple of languages, the others are easier.
100%.
Well, so I learned English and Spanish at the same time. I don't really know which one is my native language. And so,
In
and then
Panama, they teach you like two languages at the same time, or is that how?
well, my grandparents were from Jamaica. So oftentimes people will hear my a Jamaican accent. They're like, "Are you from Jamaica?" I'm like, "No, my grandparents were." So I learned English with a bit of a Jamaican accent.
One of the things that we talk about on the channel, and that's why this conversation is very important, is most issues that happens in society is because we don't understand each other. Most issues is communication issues, just like two married couples, right? Like
Correct.
if they don't communicate, they're going to have an issue. If they communicate wrongly, they're going to have an issue. And if you go
Exactly.
back to the essence of any problem in the world, it's misunderstanding.
Hmm.
So what I normally promote on this channel is access to be able to communicate to each other in each other's language. If nothing else, once you get introduced to a brand new language, it doesn't matter if you're native English or native French or whatever you are, you get introduced to another language. By the context of learning that language, you are learning the culture, you are learning
Exactly.
the nuances, the do's and don'ts, the heritage, all that stuff is getting embedded in the learning process. Now, when you see somebody from that language, you feel closer to them.
Exactly. Language is culture. I mean, so much of just learning a language itself teaches you about how that culture thinks. Because, everyone laughs about, how English and Spanish are backwards, but it's really the way that people think about things. And even, I heard this wonderful documentary about Mandarin and how everything is viewed from a future perspective. And it's just interesting. It's just how beautiful just learning a language teaches you about that culture and about how that person thinks about the world.
So this is another anecdote for you and the audience. So I lived in Cyprus for like 3, 4 years, and
Okay.
I learned Greek in the process. Now,
Beautiful.
this is one of those languages that sits in the back of my mind, and I don't go to Greece, and it's not like I go hang out in Greece often. So I don't get an opportunity to practice.
Calisera.
I know. So 2007 or eight, I can't remember. I was on a trade mission with a group of consultants from the U.S., Canada, etc. We ended up in Thessaloniki in Greece. We were part of a exercise. Was it just before the economic crash of Greece, and we got to support a few entrepreneurs there. Anyway, so long story short, there was a professor from Georgia. I can't remember the name of the university. His name is George. I'm still connected to him on LinkedIn. And they were taking us on a bus, and after a dinner, we had a little bit of ouzo on the go, and the Greek language kicked in me for some reason. So I'm sitting behind the bus, and one of those buses, the guy who sits behind the bus,
the driver,
is lower than the other guy. So George, the professor, heard me speaking Greek. So he's been hanging out with me for a week. He didn't know I speak Greek. So he heard that I speak Greek. He grabbed me by the hair, and he says, "You speak Greek all this time, and you didn't tell me?"
You're like, I forgot.
I didn't drink alcohol before. No, I did. I guess he kicked in.
So my husband and I just went to Greece this year.
We just came back, actually, in
for
October.
our 25th anniversary. It was one of my bucket list items that I wanted to go, and we enjoyed it.
Where did you go?
In September. We were there for 10 days. Gosh, we started off in Thessaloniki, then went down to Philippi, then down to Athens, and then took a cruise and went to Mykonos and Santorini and Crete. It was amazing.
Yeah, we went between September 15th and we returned on October 10th, I think, or something like that. And
so we definitely crossed paths.
We did, Robin. I think, somewhere. We went to Athens. We went to MiTio. We went back down to Crete. We flew down to Crete. We spent a little bit of time in Crete. And then we went to Santorini. So we probably crossed paths in Santorini.
We probably did. I enjoyed my time there, for sure. And the food, of course.
It's such a fun conversation to be talking to you, Dr. Lee.
Yes.
One question I have, a couple questions I have on technology. We sort of touched on it. And we talked about how technology can have some uses in the language access. In your world right now, what is it exactly you're doing with technology to enable language access a little bit more better than the old traditional way of accessing language access?
So, the old traditional way was in person, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And that was limited because say you had a hospital where the majority of their limited English proficient patients were Spanish speakers, great. So you hire a couple of 2 or 3 Spanish speakers and you're good to go. But what if you have the occasional Mandarin speaker or the occasional, Japanese person or, French, then you're stuck because you don't have an in-person interpreter. And enter technology initially with just phones, right? And you would call someone. And now you have video, which is much better because language is 70% nonverbal. So video interpreting is a plus, especially for ASL interpreting, American Sign Language. And now we're incorporating AI. And as you mentioned, AI initially is going to be only for the general stuff. The documentation type of things, the paperwork stuff that you can't really mess someone's health up too bad if it gets bad. And eventually AI is going to catch up, but it's still 5 to 10 years away.
Yeah, we're going through a trust phase right now, right? So.
Correct. Well, it's still a ways off before it can replace a real person in a medical setting or in a legal setting. But it's coming, and so we need to embrace the technology. We can't cover our eyes or
join them, right?
Exactly. You can't stick your head under a sand and pretend it's not going to be a major player. Technology is already a major player in translation. There's no written translator today that does not use technology to do their translations.
Absolutely. So in your opinion, which role do you think professionals should always retain, regardless of how technological advancement and progress comes along?
So the physical, the real person interpreter is going to still always be the culture broker. So in medical interpreting, you have the 4 roles, right? You have the conduit, the culture broker, the advocate. So they will always retain the culture broker because it's so the nuances of culture that's going to be very difficult to teach a machine to interpret that.
Absolutely. Now, as we get closer to the end of our conversation, Dr. Lee, where can people reach out to you, get in touch with you? I know you're on LinkedIn, so I sent you a LinkedIn request. Okay. If you don't mind accepting that, because when I do the posting after the episode is published, I'll tag you, you'll see it, and you'll see everything else
Wonderful.
there.
Definitely. So if they want to go to my website, drnelvalee.com, that's drnelvalee.com, you'll find all my books there. You'll find all my social media. I post all my podcast interviews in there. I've got speeches on there, etc. And for the AI or my platform, my interpreting platform, they can find it on my business website, which is concretebuilds.org, rather. The email is support at Concrete Builds, but concretebuilds.org is a new company because I'm also dabbling in developers and development, real estate development.
You're in everything, Dr. Lee. That's good.
I'm a bit of a what do you call those, serial entrepreneurs.
Absolutely. Is there a few words of encouragement that you can say to the aspiring women leaders out there that they listen to this conversation and say, I want to be like Dr. Lee? What would you say to them?
Just always know that you have a voice for a reason. I've always believed that I'm a unique voice, right? I'm a woman, I'm Hispanic, I'm Black. Very few people have lived my experience, and therefore I get to be a really good advocate for people that are similar to me, in one capacity or another. I believe that my voice matters, and it's important for my voice to be heard. And the old adage, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. If you don't have a seat at the table, you're not going to be taken seriously and given enough voice and enough consideration. And so you owe it to yourself, you owe it to people that are like you in some way or another to be represented.
Absolutely. And I invite our listeners, if you have it sounds to me I can do this on your behalf, Dr. Lee.
Yes.
It sounds to me like you're open for conversation. So if somebody has any questions, dialogue that would like to conduct or have with Dr. Lee, please reach out to me. If you don't know her, I will connect you to her. I'll facilitate the introduction to Dr. Lee myself. Please do so as soon as you can. On behalf of myself and the audience, I'd really like to thank you, Dr. Lee, for joining me. Any last final thoughts or comments?
Well, obviously, Merry Christmas. I see your Christmas decorations Lee, back there. Oh, that's the wall.
That's not a virtual background. I keep saying that on every episode.
I love it. Well, Merry Christmas to all. Happy holidays, and may your 2026 be awesome.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lee, and I wish you all the luck on your campaign. I hope you'll be successful in your ventures, and I wish you best of luck in everything you do. I really tremendously enjoyed this conversation. I hope you come back to the channel after you win the election, and we'll have another podcast with you. I really like that.
A celebratory podcast.
That would be perfect. And I wish everybody a Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to all. I'm sure I'm going to be doing another podcast before the year end, but just in case if I didn't, thank you so much for listening in. If you're coming on our audio channels, thank you for listening in. If you're coming on our YouTube channel, thank you for watching us. And if you could, and it won't cost you anything, to subscribe to our channel, that'd be great. We appreciate that. You're not under no obligation. I'm not pushing for subscribers. I'm just trying to spread the message as much as we can. And we don't sell vitamins or any other stuff on this channel. We're just interested in conversation. So thanks so much for everybody, and I'll see you at the next episode. Dr. Lee, hang on 1 second.
Sure.